Here's some news. Wacky, ridiculous idea, however, Bernie Sanders has introduced an impractical Medicare-For-All bill with nobody on board, but 16 popular senators, cool. The bill likely won't pass, but it would cost trillions of dollars for the sake of, everyone's health. Okay. And it would largely tax the extremely wealthy in order to keep people alive. Cool. David Merritt, Executive Vice President of America's Health Insurance Plans, said of the bill, whether it's called single payer or Medicare for all, government-controlled health care cannot work. It will eliminate choice, undermine quality, put a chill on medical innovation, and place an even heavier burden on hardworking taxpayers. When asked who gives a cunt-shitting goddamn what you f***ing think, dipshit, the head of insurance lobbyists responded by saying, "Oh right, my opinion on single-payer healthcare is like asking Godzilla what she thinks of missiles, or asking the president what he thinks of releasing his taxes." Not only is the executive vice president of America's health insurance plans the wrong person to ask about this, but he's also wrong about it. Most people pay more now for health care than the amount their taxes would go up in Crazy Bernie's nutty bill, so Medicare for all would save most of us money. Cool. The United States spends the most on healthcare of any other developed country, but is 27th in life expectancy. Also the 4th highest infant mortality rate, 6th highest maternal mortality rate, and the 9th highest likelihood of dying at a younger age from things like cancer and cardiovascular disease. When asked for comment, cardiovascular disease responded, whether it's called coronary artery bypass grafting or percutaneous coronary intervention, treating heart disease cannot work. It will help eliminate cardiovascular disease. And then it just sort of trails off to, count its money or its artery plaque buildup or whatever. Many, of course, are turned off by the very idea of everybody chipping in to pay for everybody's health care. Former presidential candidate Evan McMullin asked on Twitter, when the populists of the far left rise on the promise of free college and single-choice health care for all, who will stand for liberty? The answer, of course, is all of the healthy and educated people, Evan. Everybody. Even the White House got to weigh in on the bill when Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders responded that, "I can't think of anything worse than having government more involved in your health care," to which nobody for some reason shouted, "But your dad's Mike Huckabee." Also, nobody said that something worse than the government getting more involved in healthcare is that the United States spends the most on healthcare of any developed country and is 27th in life expectancy, and so on, all that stuff I said. The bill won't pass because Congress is ghouls, but hey, baby steps. But not American baby steps, because they have the 4th highest infant mortality rate. And hey, speaking of Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying words for people to hear, in a recent press conference she said of ESPN's journalist Jamel Hill's tweet calling President Donald Trump a white supremacist, "I think that's one of the more outrageous comments that anyone could make, and certainly something that I think is a fireable offense by ESPN." The White House advocating for the firing of citizens for criticizing the president isn't new, it's very new. Unless you count that one time when former President Barack Obama's press secretary said that NBC should fire the host of their show, The Apprentice, for the incessant perpetuation of his racist birtherism. Do we have a clip? Why not? On the same day Huckabee Sanders said calling Trump a white supremacist is a fireable offense, the White House skirted a question about whether or not Trump would sign a unanimous joint congressional resolution condemning white supremacists. So, probably nothing there. But hey, speaking of ESPN, sports. And speaking of sports, here's a new segment we like to call Some Sports, about which I know quite a bit and in which I participate quite well. Here's some news. The NFL, a nefarious cadre of greedy old white men putting on a 16-week campaign of literally mind-altering physical violence funded by the voting public, finally returned this week! Hell yeah! Missed that gridiron. Gridiron? There's your problem. Make it like rubber. It's safer, Gridiron means football field. I already knew that. I was doing a bit? Okay. As part of their ongoing commitment to erode our sense of cognitive dissonance, Sunday Night Football heavily featured alleged domestic abuser Ezekiel Elliott, whose first documented abuse allegation was in February of 2016, with subsequent incidents extending all the way into November of last year, and whose suspension was lifted just in time for Week 1. Thank God! Can't have Cowboys v. Giants without Zeke. In other news, Colin Kaepernick, former Super Bowl starting quarterback and current perfectly serviceable professional quarterback, is still inexplicably unemployed, leading some to believe that his 2016 refusal to stand for the national anthem until racial injustice in America was satisfactorily addressed has led to his purposeful exclusion by the owners, which is collusion and not going to stop people from protesting and rejecting exactly the kind of freedom the Star-Spangled Banner celebrates. This just in, Josh McCown, Scott Tolzien, Tom Savage, and Trevor Siemian all got paid money to play quarterback last week. Josh McCown? All right. Still, great to see Zeke. I have him in fantasy. And now, since I'm both condemning football and participating in fantasy football, it's time for Hippo Corner. Corner Crit. F***ing Hypocrite Corner. Ted Cruz's personal Twitter account liked some sweet, sweet stepmom porn on 9/11. And before we continue, just gonna enjoy that. Oof. The like, of course, came from a man who supported a law banning sex toys because he says that one should not stimulate one's own genitalia without another person present for reproductive purposes. Kind of hypocritical, Ted. You know, it's like if Rush Limbaugh told all of his listeners that Hurricane Irma is a hoax from the liberal media to advance the climate change agenda and up water bottle sales, and then immediately evacuated his Florida home, which was in Irma's hurricane route. It'd be like that because that happened, and so did this. But Cruz dismissed the irony and said he believes that consenting adults can do whatever they want behind closed doors, except be married and gay at the same time. Cruz denies that the like came from him and says it was a staffing error because it's much more believable that a millennial-age social media staffer got confused and went to a porn Twitter page and liked a porn video of a woman who looked like Ted Cruz's wife than it is that an out-of-touch, sexually repressed, and sexually repressing man checked out a porn Twitter page and in his frenzy of shame-wanking accidentally hit like or didn't think people could see that he hit like on a video of a woman who looks like his wife masturbating to her stepdaughter getting fucked by her stepdaughter's boyfriend on 9/11. Ted, if you'd just been upfront about masturbating, if you'd said, I'm sorry for sex shaming everyone to a standard that I myself can't live by, we'd get it. Who cares that you jerk off? I've been jerking off this entire time. Somehow. And if you had said, we as Americans need to carry on, even on this horrible day, and if that means doing normal things like masturbating, so be it. Let me lead the way. We would have understood. But instead, now you'll always just look back on this day and think, oof. Man, that truly was my 9/11. Speaking of what I was just talking about, James Woods criticized Armie Hammer's recent film Call Me By Your Name because he said it, quote, quietly chips away the last barriers of decency. Hashtag NAMBLA. Cool hashtag. Hip, dude. James was criticizing the film because it's about a 24-year-old male character and a 17-year-old male character who have a romantic and physical relationship. And one can definitely argue that that is an uncomfortable age difference. And oh wait, James Woods dated a 19-year-old when he was 60 and a 20-year-old when he was 66. Special thanks to Hammer for armying him. F that up. Special thanks to Armie for hammering him. Yeah! And special ew to James for hammering that 19-year-old when he was 60. Barriers of decency. But, to be fair, even though 19 is still immature, one could say that 19 is very different than 17. And oh wait, Amber Tamblyn mentioned at the time, quote, James Woods tried to pick me and my friend up at a restaurant once. He wanted to take us to Vegas. I'm 16, I said. Even better, he said. James denied this happened, and Amber wrote an open letter to him saying, F*** you, yeah it did. Later that day, he retweeted the Cincinnati Zoo's 1-year-old giraffe, adding, just look at the sheer beauty of this creature. Even better, right, James? Obviously, he doesn't want to f*** that giraffe, but like, come on, James, it's the same day. Chill. This has been whatever we called that. Speaking of actors, movies. And speaking of movies, this. The summer movie season drew to a close last week with a report card best exemplified by two of the summer's most beloved movie characters, a cartoonish mountain of shit and a talking poop emoji. No, switch them. Yeah, I understand why you were confused. This past summer was the movie industry's worst since 2006, which, for reference, was the year the Miami Vice movie came out. Box office receipts were 15% lower than last year, signaling a decline in the number of people who are interested in going to see movies in the theater. Movie studios wasted no time in pointing their cigar-stained fat cat paws at Rotten Tomatoes as being responsible for the lackluster performance of several tentpole films this summer, including Baywatch, Pirates of the Caribbean Part 5? Transformers Part 5, and Tom Cruise's The Mummy, a film in which Tom Cruise is nearly twice as old as the person playing the mummy. Blaming the failure of your film on a website that reported whether or not people liked it is like blaming the computer that tallied up all your wrong answers for why you bombed the SATs. Like, just stop making shitty movies. People don't hate big blockbuster films, my dudes. We're not against superhero movies or reboots or sequels or movies that are all of those things. And people will still go see a movie if they're interested in it, even when most critics consider it to be the cinematic equivalent of crib death. We do, after all, have the 4th highest infant mortality rate. But it's f***ing expensive to go to the movies in 2017. You gotta give people a good reason to drop that cash, bruh. Tell a fun, interesting story that wasn't written by 9 people, or show us something we haven't seen before. Nobody needed to wait for a Rotten Tomatoes score to know that 2 reboots of long-dormant franchises starring a pair of polarizing retirement-age movie stars wasn't worth dropping $60 on. You could spend that money on so many other things that aren't those 2 dipshits. Or cartoon faces people text to each other instead of typing actual words. A movie Sony knew was so bad that they placed a review embargo on it that forbid anyone from publishing a review until literally hours before its first showing. Just stop making bad movies, and then you can blame Rotten Tomatoes for all the money you make from your good movies. Here's some news. There was a school shooting in Spokane, Washington, and there's ethnic cleansing in Myanmar, and no jokes about that, just thought we should end this episode on a low note. We did a... Why? That was a bad idea. It's sad. Hey everybody, thanks for watching that video. If you want to subscribe to our channel, click the big C in the middle, and if you want to get notifications when we have new videos, click the bell icon. Also click like and comment and do all the things that you know what to do because it's not your first day on YouTube. It's your second day.